In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you. There is an invisible person in each of us. That's exactly what the famous quotation, "Know thyself," alludes to. Have you ever wondered exactly what Jesus meant when he said, and I quote, "Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment," end quote, or what the Prophet Muhammad said, and I quote, "The world is a prison for the believer and a paradise for the unbeliever." What exactly were they trying to teach us about our human predicament? What philosophical anthropology can we derive from their statements? In this short talk, I'm going to explain to you what they both meant, because what they meant reveals to us the very nature of our personal and political struggle. What they meant opens up to us the possibility for transcendent freedom. Let me share with you a part of a lecture I gave at the beginning of every semester. It was part of my lectures, Why We Need the Scientific Method. I would ask my students a simple question, one question. I'd stand in front of them and ask, how many of you can see me standing here in front of you right now? Consistently, 100% of the students who would raise their hands in affirmation that they did indeed see me. Then I'd look at them and I'd make a counterclaim. My counterclaim was, you do not see me, nor have you ever seen me, because I am invisible. There were only three possible answers to my question. Some of them could see me, none of them could see me, or they were all blind, making it physically impossible for any of them to determine my visual presence. I eliminated the third possibility because no one in my class had ever been visually blind in all the years that I had taught. Now, this led me to my next phase of the argument. I then would offer all students an opportunity to materially support their claim that they can see me, support it with evidence. They generally responded that they could see me because they are not visually blind. Then I tell them that I will prove with material evidence that I am invisible and that they truly cannot see me, that they never have seen me, and that they never will see me. I would then take them step by step through my proofs. I'd begin by laying the foundation for my argument with these material facts. First is that all human beings are visually limited to the visible range of colors on the electromagnetic spectrum, popularly called the color spectrum. The basic colors we can see are yellow, red, green, and blue. Outside of that range of what we call the primary colors of yellow, red, green, and blue, and the shades which they make when mixed together, we are unable to sense other colors with our eyes. For example, have you ever looked at a rainbow arc across the sky? You can clearly see red, blue, and green streaks of light reflect off the crystal water droplets. Another example is your radio or your cell phones. We cannot see the radio or microwaves which make our radios and cell phones work, nor can we see the colors that make up solar wind from the sun, nor can we see cosmic rays, radio waves, X-rays, and gamma rays, because they all lie outside our scope of visible light: yellow, red, green, and blue. But we do know by means of modern technology that infinite wavelengths of light do reflect off and penetrate things around us. Imagine for a moment what the world around you would look like if you could see all the colors or wavelengths of energy around you. Imagine what your appearance would be like. In that case, everything around us that we think we see, including people, and our individual appearance, as well as the difference between night and day, would disappear off the canvas of our consciousness. That unitary experience would change our idea of the entire universe. What would then stand out to our sense of sight is that only the act of thinking is proof that we do exist. And thought is invisible. Finally, we would know ourselves. We would know the invisible person as being in itself. We would know self as logos or thought. Secondly, I demonstrate yet another material fact about time to prove my counterclaim. The arrow of time only moves in one temporal direction. That direction is into the past and eventually non-existence. We see that all around us when we see things and beings disintegrate or decay. Water evaporates, rocks erode, and organic substances decay. Light traveling at 186,000 miles per second in a vacuum from whatever its source may have been to any object illumined by it, and which reflects one or more of the visible colors to our eyeballs on a passage of time into the past. It's a matter of simple addition. A measure of time from the source to the object illumined, 2, plus time measured to reflect off the object into the brain. Even though the time span is measured in nanoseconds, the fact that it takes time compels us to admit one and only one conclusion. We do not see what is. We only see what was. What we experience in our brain is a flood of images of what is not. It's all what we imagine and perceive we see. What we see is actually a series of images of what reality was in the past tense. That means that our little life drama and our flicker of life or lifespan is what we imagine reality to be in our brain and by social consensus with others who purposely commit the same grammatical fallacies. We each do it so that our imaginatively active self can sustain our socially constructed virtual reality so that it would not fade like a shadow in the light. We do not want to live in fear that it will, though we do live in fear all the time. For example, by social agreement, we have grammatical rules which frame for us a past tense, present tense, and future tense. Thus, we identify objects we sense as being in the present tense, but that belief is false. Constructing conclusion on false premises will always cause defective and illogical thinking along with dangerous behavior. For example, upon seeing a friend, we say, "Hi, nice to see you." That grammar is an agreed upon social fabrication because we do not actually see our friend, we actually saw our friend in our own perception. The fact is, we never see our friend. We guess or assume what reality is. The fact is that our memory quickly compares other past sensations to determine how similar or dissimilar they are, and by doing imaginative compare and contrast, we guess or assume that it is probably the same thing giving us a similar sensation. The reality is that we can only have a past tense sensation of people and what goes on around us. We cannot know truth in the dark. The assumptions we rely upon are like a blind man's cane. All of our visual sensations originate from unseen sources flowing into the past as foam flows on the face of a wide river by the undertow of gravity, leading to an entropic end. Have you ever seen foam flow upstream? No, of course not, because that would be against the law of entropy. Not even gravity can pull itself backwards in time against the law of entropy. Our lives are analogous to natural foam on the surface of a river. We are not in control. Some of us may come to understand that future tense is a fabrication too. There is no material future at all for anything or anyone. Every material thing flows away into the past. The second law of thermodynamics is absolute proof of that fact. We are sobered by the fact that there is no future, and that realization frightens us to our very core. Thus, we are compelled to make one and only one other conclusion. That conclusion is that reality cannot be seen with our physical eyes, and that since there is something about it and something about you and something about us together that is authentically real, then it follows that we are invisible too. Every prophet from Imhotep to Jesus to Muhammad has said the exact same idea. We are lost to ourselves, and so we cannot know ourselves. The ancient Egyptian proverb, and I quote, "Man, know thyself," permanently echoes in the back of our minds, even if only intuitively. It should be our life quest to know ourselves. But it is not easy to achieve that quest. Difficulties arise along our journey because we cannot by our own effort bridge the gap between ourselves and the perfect simple tense, I am that I am. We are predisposed to accept ourselves as shadows cast upon the wall of this universe, shadows that are counterfeit copies like dark clouds floating across the face of the night sky. What we do with those shadows in our minds is assemble and disassemble them in endless combinations and permutations. Through the bump and grind of our fractured lives and our dark memories, we compare shadows to one another as though looking in a scrapbook, looking for dissimilarity and similarity between them. From the shadow counterfeit forms of truth we do not know, we construct a make-believe life and even entire worlds. We imagine make-believe gods, which by virtue of being idols built upon storied contradictions are doomed to crack, disintegrate, and be blown away like dust in the air. In our minds, then, chaos is inevitable. Therefore, conflict is inevitable, because our shadowland assumptions upon which our lives are based are inherently logically flawed. So we can never be at oneness with our invisible person. We are each alone. We are alone in our invisibility. We're all on a lockdown, as one might be locked down in solitary confinement. We are separated and compelled to perpetually sound out from deep in our lonely selves pings, as one might hear on a sonar speaker, because we long to be heard, and we intuitively know that time does run out for every material thing that exists, and that if we fail to know our invisible person, we too may cease to exist. Ours is a longing to be found, therefore, before we cease to exist. Ours is a need to be united with our invisible person, to be everlasting. I am Dr. Stephen Nur Ahmed. Peace be unto you.